Hi everyone. We just covered state standards and WIDA standards. So this video will focus on practicing with both those standards to make sure we feel comfortable and confident. To start though, I want us to think about what comes first, the WIDA standard or the state standard. When planning a lesson, do you find the state standard first and then find the WIDA that supplements that? Or do you find the WIDA standard first and then build the content after that? Another thing to think about is, do you start with standards and build a lesson around that? Or do you build a lesson and find the standards that fit? This is actually a tricky question. It has much debate. So I want you to think about that as you develop your teaching career and as you get more comfortable with lesson planning. Let's move to the practice. So on this slide, we have a warm-up. I've pulled a WIDA standard and I want us to break it down by standard, grade, language, expectation, or use, the mode of communication, or domain, and the language features that will be taught or learned. So for here we have ELD SC68, argue expressive. Construct scientific arguments that support or refute a claim based on data and evidence through expanded noun groups to classify or add details. So based on that standard, what is the standard or the content area? What's the grade level? What's the language function, and what's the language domain or expectation? What language features are being learned or taught? As a bonus, if you want more practice, consider how the language feature would change based on proficiency, so going to that proficiency matrix, as well as the state standard that would best match with this. Here are the answers. So we have the first part of the standard is ELDSC, which stands for English Language Development Science. So the standard or content area is science. We see 6-8, which stands for 6th to 8th grade. The language use is argue, and the mode of communication, domain or expectation, is expressive. And we can see through the underlined portion that the language feature that will help us accomplish that standard is the teaching of noun groups. Let's keep practicing, because that was just WIDA. We also need to get comfortable matching WIDA with a state standard. So for this activity, there are 3 scenarios. Based on that scenario, I would like you to identify the state standard, a language domain, a language feature, and a WIDA standard. The idea being we're going to work with the state standard first and then WIDA. So almost using the state standard to determine, okay, what language domain do students need to meet this standard? What language features do I need to teach? And then find the WIDA that matches that way. So the 3 scenarios we have are an elementary lesson about how a seed becomes a tree, a middle school math lesson about basic algebraic equations, and lastly, a high school English lesson about Shakespeare, sonnets, and rhyme. So for this activity, you'll have to pull up the WIDA book as well as your state standards documents and try and find 2 that match.